today because Jazz has not had a chance to watch Gen V, so he's still catching up. But we do have our homeboy MTF the third. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I am not a member of Gen V, but I am a member of Gen X. So,
Oh,
I am
wait,
I'm
you're
ready
Gen
for
X? Really? I
I'm
thought you
Gen
were. I
X.
thought you were younger. I am Gen Y, which is millennials. I guess is what people
Yeah.
call us. Yeah, but I'm an older millennial, so
Yeah. So
it's a
we're probably not too far apart in age
yeah. We're
because
not
I'm
too
a
far.
latter Gen X.
That's cool. That's cool. So Gen V is named after the drug that they take called
Hmm.
V. So that's why it's called Generation V. And I really like this show. I think it's great. It's one of those shows that I mentioned in my last podcast. There's a few shows that are woke, but people are too dumb to realize how woke it is.
And
Right?
that is definitely the boys universe for sure.
The boys universe. And the thing is, like, it's one of those things where it's like Wolf of Wall Street. Wolf of Wall Street is not supposed to be glamorizing
Hmm.
this lifestyle. It's supposed to be like a cautionary tale. It's telling you the horrors of this lifestyle
Hmm.
and what should happen. But people are too dumb to realize that, and they take away the fact that it's like cool everything that happened in the movie, but in real life that would not be cool. Same thing with Fight
I'm,
Club. Fight Club is
yeah.
another movie where people don't get the message of Fight Club.
Well, you know what I really think it is, and not to get too deep into like talking about the mothership, so to speak, is that as I've seen it happen to a lot of people in my generation, where like we grew up reading comics as
Yeah.
kids, and then when we got older, we wanted the content to get older with us and
Mm-hmm.
get kind of more edgy and get more realistic and violent and more sort of stay in the kind of emotional uh, territory of our adolescence, but in terms of the what they could show, more graphic violence, more graphic sex, and to the extent that it was social commentary, sadly, not necessarily deep social commentary. And I think
Yeah.
that's where the different levels of the boys fandom is. It's like the
Yeah.
people who see the satire
Yeah.
are recognizing the social commentary, but the
Yes.
people who aren't seeing the satire are thinking that, oh, this is how it should be. It's almost like
Yeah.
Zack Snyder fans. No offense, well, a little bit of offense,
A
a
little
little bit
bit
of
of it.
offense to Zack. Yeah, where it's like if Batman was real, he'd be tearing out people's spines. Like
Yeah.
and that's what they're getting. That's the fix that they're getting from the boys.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the same thing. They're like, if Superman was real, he would be Homelander. Like, God, I hope not. That's not if that's how
Exactly.
you view regular people. They're like, if a regular person was Superman, he would be Homelander. I'm like, what is wrong with you? That's so
No, but it's
bizarre.
kind of funny though, because I used to say things like that. I used to say that like what Superman is really a testament to is how lucky we are that he landed with like the most wholesome
Yeah,
Midwestern loving people who raised
yeah,
him up to be like, the best of us
yes.
when he could have been raised by, a Trump voter, right? And then
In the next farm over, basically,
exactly.
it is Kansas.
Exactly. So it's like Homelander is like what people who hate everybody else think that they would be like if they were
Yeah.
raised with superpowers.
It's really interesting because this episode uh starts off saying like we live in a post-racial world because we have a black member in the in the seventh
Yes,
when they show
yes.
A Train going into the seventh. And I like, are people not picking up the commentary here? Are people not realizing that
Seriously.
they're not saying that we live in a post-racial world? They're saying that like something as token as putting a black person in one group is
Hmm.
a testament that there is no racial issues in this world. They're making fun of that. They're not saying that's what's happening.
Especially because if you've watched The Boys, you know exactly what happened after A Train joined the Seven.
Yeah.
I do think that he's an interesting character. Again, not to go too far down the rabbit hole of The Boys. I think that he's a multi-layered character. He's a piece of shit, but he's like, there's a lot of like cool stuff that they're doing with the A Train character. And it was
Mhm.
interesting take that sort of flashback, and how probably, if we're being real, a certain group of people in the Black community would feel to have their a first, Black superhero validated in the top tier. I mean, it's like Jackie Robinson, right? Like,
Yeah,
like Jackie Robinson was a good dude, but if Jackie Robinson wasn't a good dude, we'd still celebrate him. We'd
yeah.
still be like, this is our guy. He's representing for our people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because, like, you mentioned the boys, when they're trying to find another member of the seventh, Homelander goes, "I'm not putting a Muslim in the seventh. Are you crazy?" So it's one of those things where, like, they want to give the appearance that they're giving these people a shot and they have a
Hmm.
chance to make it, but really they don't. They're very selective on who they want. They want people who they can control, who they can promote, who they can market. That's really
Hmm.
what it's all about. And that's not so different than what we see in media today. That's not so different than what we see
Yes.
in our superhero shows, in our movies, So the
Yeah. I
show
mean,
is a
it's
commentary on that.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting that we're, having this episode, kind of coming off of the Marvels and all
Yeah,
of the controversy, in those circles about, is Marvel pushing diversity too hard? All of that kind of,
yeah,
noise that's coming from some of the usual suspects, who
yeah,
kind of feel like you have to do this constant reminder, a constant check-in of whether diversity and inclusion tests well.
yeah,
Like, are you scaring white people off? White males off by things being too brown or too female.
yes.
Um,
That's so true. That's so true. And it's really interesting because, like, they'll prompt people up in positions where, like, they can kind of showcase them and say,
mhm.
"Hey, look, we have these people of color in these positions." But behind the scenes, they'll be doing things that are super offensive or racist.
Mhm.
Even now, like, we're talking about the boys and how they're like, "We're never gonna put a fucking Muslim in the seven," and but they'll put them in the competition where they're like in like second place.
Right.
Right now, we just had, we mentioned the Marvels. We have a show with a movie and a show with a Muslim superhero. Yet, they gave $2 million to Israel and zero money to Palestinians. Um,
Mhm.
Pretty interesting, Disney. Pretty interesting, Disney, that you're doing this at the same time. It's kind of like, hey, a little sketchy there. So it's basically the show Gen V and the boys are making fun of the capitalistic and consumerism of superheroes is what they're
Right.
doing. And that's what they're
Yeah.
making fun of. And people are thinking, no, this is just how real life would work in if
Mhm.
superheroes were real. And they're like, no, this is how the real world is actually working now, even without superheroes. They just need to
Exactly.
come to realize it.
Exactly. Right. It's kind of interesting that they're seeing exactly what it is, but they're not seeing the commentary in that.
Yeah,
It's like, but don't you see the problem with this world?
yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's get into it, man. So
Yeah, for sure.
also one thing I want to mention, A Train is not the first black in the seven. Black Noir is actually black, isn't he? People
Secretly
just don't
black
know.
though.
Secretly black, yeah. Yeah,
Although,
yeah.
no, actually it may not, because remember, he wasn't an original member of the Seven. He was in that
Uh,
other group, and then he got brought in,
oh, you're right.
to the Seven.
He was in the group the Soldier Boy made.
Right. So I don't
You're
know I don't know the exact timeline of that, but it is possible that he was in the Seven and he just didn't acknowledge that he was black. Because I
yeah.
think even a lot of us, didn't realize that Black Noir was black until they actually showed the flashback,
Yeah.
of him being black.
Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah. Uh
Which brings, let's go back around to that, because I have a theory that connects to Gen V about Black Noir.
Okay,
Um,
cool. Let's get into that. All right. So we we get this scene of like A Train and everything on the TV, but also these two girls and they're playing, and then this one girl, she's having her time in the month for the first time, which like I'm sure boys would be like, ew, gross, but like since it's the boys, it's like
yeah.
they don't
It's a
realize
feature,
it.
not a bug.
Yeah, exactly. The feature, not a bug. That's so funny. So she ends up killing her own family, uh, by having her first period. Which, damn, who writes this stuff? That's
Look,
crazy.
whoever wrote that needs some quality time with the psychotherapist, because
I could never think of that.
it's so Freudian, right? I mean, it's like combination Freudian, combination like religious. Like, I don't know. Do you remember Carrie?
Yeah,
Um,
Carrie. Yeah,
Remember how like her mother like treated like her having her period like from the devil,
yeah,
like, something like you could almost imagine. Luckily it wasn't this, but you could almost imagine she was in like a religious family,
yeah,
and and it would be like subtext becoming text, her
yeah,
period blood killing her family. But I think it's just an interesting kind of parallel. Like, she's coming into her womanhood, and so
yeah,
many people are often afraid of that, and
yeah,
that becomes manifested in her literally killing her parents.
yeah. The thing I like about Gen V and The Boys is because it feels very put together, whereas like
Mhm,
Marvel feels like things were taken out and then put in, things were taken out and put in.
mhm.
It feels a little disheveled, whereas
Yeah.
like Gen V felt like an entire arc and story, and they were like, "We don't need to connect it to anything else. We're just going to shoot it the way we wanna shoot it." And it
Mhm.
feels very concise, and I like that because a
Yeah.
lot of these things that they're showing in the beginning come back around at the end,
Yeah.
which I really like. But yeah, she kills her family, and then she ends up being an orphan. Her we don't know where her sister ends up, and then she gets into Godoken, which is this school for superheroes.
Mhm. I like the way
And
you pronounce it, because it almost sounds like you're pronouncing the sound in Street Fighter when you throw
yeah, it does. Godoken, Godoken. Ryu wins. Speaking of Ryu wins, we end up seeing her roommate, who is Little Cricket, and she's like in a little ring fighting hamsters because her
Yeah.
superpowers is that she can shrink.
I
Which is
love Emma. She is so cool. Like, I
yeah,
don't know what it was about her, like, because obviously we have like the streamer culture, and we have those kind of like annoying types, but
yeah,
there was just something about her. Maybe it was because we saw who she was when the camera wasn't on,
yeah.
or maybe it's just like the nature of her powers. It's just so disarming, and you kind of root for her like from almost the moment you get her on the screen.
Yeah, because you can see her insecurities and stuff like that. She's like, "I'm never going to be a combat soldier or a hero. Like, what am I gonna do? Become the size of a pickle?" Like,
Right.
she's not, so she has to go to the performing arts route, which is something I didn't realize. So basically, these superheroes have like a few routes. They can go into the superhero route, or they can go into the entertainment route,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense because when you see in The Boys, there's like people who are like superheroes that are also like boy bands and musical artists. They're like the Justin
Right.
Bieber of superheroes. And there's like religious superheroes that do like the religious circuits, and they go around with their like I don't know, pastors and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and
And
they do this stuff.
that's an interesting bit of world building for the show, that, kind of like, this is probably going to be something we return to. It's that The Boys doesn't really explain like how uh how these heroes, these supers exist in society when they're not superheroes. So I just
Yeah,
thought that they were superheroes, but then they did other stuff on the side. I never thought about the idea that there were people who had superpowers that were just like, no, nope, just gonna be a super powered stockbroker,
yep,
like.
exactly. Like there's no like secret identity in this world. Everyone is just who they are, kind of, which is very
Yeah.
very interesting. Um, yeah, that is really strange. All right, and so Emma becomes roommates with Marie. They go to the combat arts show and they see Golden Boy for the first time. And
Mhm.
Golden Boy fights this guy, and he's like their number one guy. He is a shoe in to get into the seven. So like basically, this college is like a breeding ground for people to like, you know,
I,
go
I gotta be
into.
honest though. Of all the things, there's a lot of things to love about the show, but Golden Boy is too on the nose. Like, it's too on the nose that like he's got the superhero name Golden Boy, and he's
Yeah,
literally the Golden Boy of
yeah,
of the school that is being touted as like the alpha good boy. You know?
Yeah. I do like the fact that he is basically the strongest person in the school, but he is a Johnny Storm ripoff. So he's
Yeah.
basically Johnny
Well,
Storm
he's like Johnny Storm and Captain America at the same time, like a
at the
little
same
bit, you
time.
know. Yeah, because he's
Yeah.
like invincible, you know, while he's flamed on.
Yeah, while he's flamed on, but all his clothes come off apparently. He's like naked all the time, which I think is funny. But he meets his girlfriend, and he's
Mhm.
telling her how he's still having nightmares, and she's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll just f them out of you." I'm like, "What the fuck? Who wrote this?"
Nice.
And it's just really funny. Then he's got another friend named Andre. They show up,
Mhm.
so like the cast is kind of building together. Um,
Now I
and
gotta
then
ask you, what were your first impression of these of like the popular kids when you first met them? Um,
I love that the popular kids are all very diverse. They're not
mhm,
like, all just white rich kids. So I thought that was cool. But I didn't really think like I don't know. I wasn't really buying the chemistry at first. So, but it took me
okay.
a while, and then I'm like, okay. And sometimes they do that on purpose. Sometimes you don't want to see the chemistry up close. You want to see them build chemistry, kind of like the
Yeah.
Avengers, where they don't get along at first, and then they come together.
Yeah, I was sus of them like right off the bat. Probably because, you know, that's like the trope, right? The popular kids are douches
Yeah,
and you know, they're good, they're up to some nonsense. So it was like, oh no, her power, like I don't think we knew about what Kate's power was early on. But you
no,
know,
yeah,
you saw Golden Boy like rip somebody's arm off.
yeah,
You saw Andre kind of be a little bit douchey, like where
yeah,
it kind of looked like he was like that's his boy, but maybe he's a little bit jealous of him, you know,
yeah.
like so I was like, "Oh no, I hope they don't, you know, hope they don't get up to some criminal stuff that needs to be covered up." You know, like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got some people in the comments. They're like, the popular kids being diverse was really cool and more realistic. Yeah, it is more
yeah, for sure.
realistic these days, for sure. All right, so Marie finds out that she did not get into a class she wants, so she tries to get in and tries to get into this class, and they won't make an exception for her. So now she has to do performing arts. She wanted to be a hero so that she could become somebody who could have some respect, and then maybe find her sister and build a relationship with her. But she's going to go into performing arts, and they meet this other girl who's also doing performing arts, and then she's like, yeah, I'm doing a TV show. It's like a 7-part episode on grief set to the backdrop of sitcoms throughout the freaking decade. And I was like, yo, WandaVision reference.
Called Strays. Strays for WandaVision.
WandaVision caught a stray. That was so funny. Oh man, what did you think of that WandaVision reference?
I dug it. I mean, again, it ties back into what you were saying about
Yeah,
how, like, you know, you have these performance aspects, and like, why wouldn't they have actual superheroes be part of the superhero cinema? You know,
yeah,
so it's like, you know, you have someone who's had superpowers for a little while and has been acting and is trying to like move from the CW realm into something more,
yeah.
prestige oriented.
Yeah, that was funny. So Emma meets these people, and she meets some guy. They're having a good time, and he's like, "Wouldn't it be awesome if you got small?" And this is the wildest scene. But before that scene happens, we find out that the way her powers work is that she has to throw up. She
Well,
has
no,
to.
we didn't find that out until after she says yes, and I thought it was
Oh,
really
okay.
interesting because that scene, you know, again going back to Emma and how like you really root for her, you know,
Yeah,
like she thinks this guy thought she was cute, liked her,
yeah,
you know, like was like really into her, and then immediately he's like, you know what I need you to do? I need you to
yeah,
flaunt your powers for me. I think it would be so hot, and she's like, I really don't want to do it, and
yeah,
you know, he kind of pressures her, and you know, again, it kind of is like not exactly a metaphor for date rape, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
it is college, and it is like an older boy pressuring a freshman girl to do something she's not comfortable with, you
yeah.
know. And
And
then
it's
she,
also fetishizing, right? Like he's got
yeah,
this kink.
yeah, she's
Yeah,
exactly. And then when you get the reveal that she has to do this in order to use her powers, it just kind of hits that much harder because now it's like tying into all these other insecurities that, you know, younger women, you know, have to deal with in order to be liked, in order to get the boy that they like to like them back. And
yeah,
then, you know, you see her like hunched over, and in the manifestation of her insecurity is that she literally gets smaller, you know,
yeah.
which we return to, obviously.
But don't let nobody catch me watching the scene where a girl is riding a giant penis.
No, no.
I was like,
Oh man.
"God, I hope no one catches me watching this," because, like, I
Yeah,
will never live it down. I couldn't even
exactly.
I couldn't explain it if I wanted to, like, what was happening.
For sure.
Oh, man, that was crazy. So, what happens later is she ends up going to hang out with the popular people. So, Andre's out showing off his, like, skills. He ends up cutting somebody. They start bleeding. They decide to leave. Marie uses his power to bring the blood back into her neck and
Mhm.
save her. And instead of becoming a hero, they end up expelling her.
Yeah. Oh,
And
you know
she
what? We left out one of the introduction of one of my favorite characters, which is
Yeah.
Jordan.
I was gonna get to Jordan because Jordan's
Oh,
big
okay.
reveal is when Golden Boy starts killing people, and then Jordan ends up saving Marie, which
Right.
is like the Jordan's big moment. Which I was like,
Right.
damn, Jordan is freaking amazing in this
But
episode. I was like, holy shit,
Remember Jordan and Marie didn't like each other when they first met, right?
that is true.
Because Marie tries to get, into the class, and
Yeah,
Jordan's the most popular, not popular, but the sort of teacher's pet,
yeah, it's just bad. Like he
for
was
the
the teacher secretary and stuff, and he
right.
controls who goes in and who doesn't. Exactly.
Right, and it took me a while, like, way too long to realize what Jordan's powers were.
Me
Um,
too.
I I thought Jordan was a shapeshifter for when I first saw it, and then I realized that there was the bigender aspect to it, which
Yeah,
again, going back to the diversity side of it, like it was just so matter of fact that you had a superhero who was essentially non-binary or
yeah,
trans, have basically having the dual gender identity, and then each gender had a different power set.
yeah,
So when Jordan was in a certain state of mind, then it would be manifested one way. And but then when Jordan was in there, that's when Jordan was impervious to pain,
yeah.
was invincible. And I hope that there's some deeper meaning to that gets fleshed out.
Yeah, so Jordan's power when he's a guy is he's impervious to pain, so he's, like, super
Right.
strong. And what was the power for when he was a girl?
So yeah, so female Jordan can shoot back to the fire, can shoot like energy waves, but is
Energy
not
waves.
right, but is not impervious to
Yeah, it's not impervious. Yeah, so basically, yeah, if he doesn't shift in time, he can take a lot of pain, but if they do shift in time, they could be in no pain, right? So it's all about
right,
timing. And it's a
right,
fighting where the fighting scene is amazing because you see them offense with one gender, defense with another, and it's just going back and
right.
forth. And it's just a well choreographed fight. And the fact that this person wasn't even in one of the top rankings, but was able to hold her own with Golden Boy was
Well,
super cool.
I think technically Jordan was number 2.
Oh, Jordan was
Um,
number two? Oh,
Jordan was number 2, but
okay.
Jordan kind of knew that they were being propped up by
Yeah.
the fact that the dean, I forget his name right now, that the dean was on their side.
Yeah.
But the minute that the dean was out of the picture, that's when Jordan's ranking dropped.
So, like, okay, so Jordan has this power, but
Mhm,
like I'm just thinking about how amazing filming that would be,
mhm,
because like they have to film a fight scene with basically 3 people,
right.
but like one person isn't there at a time. So one person takes a punch, the other person throws a punch, but the person who is fighting them has to act like it's the same person. Like that
Yeah,
choreography must have been insane.
sure. Or I mean, or either that or the editing, right? Because
Or the editing.
I guess they could have filmed one take where it was male Jordan and another take where it was
Yeah.
female Jordan, and then intersperse them with
But
cuts.
I think
Or
splicing that would still be very, very difficult because they would
oh
have
yeah,
to be
for sure.
standing in the same mark at the same position with the same, like, facial structure. Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
I just think I don't know. I would love to see the behind the scenes of how that was done because
Oh
that
yeah, for
looks
sure.
super cool. That was really
Yeah,
cool.
a featurette of showing how that works is really cool. And we don't have to get ahead of it, but um, I just it's set most of the time when we get powers in the boys universe, you can sort of track it to a more well-known superhero. But this was
Mhm.
one of the first times that it was like a truly novel power set.
Yeah, exactly. So when he fights Jordan, he goes out and he ends up committing suicide. He ends up blowing himself up,
Mhm.
and everyone's like, "What the hell just happened?"
Right.
And that was wild. I didn't see that coming. Did you see that coming?
Not definitely not the suicide. Obviously, I had a feeling that, like, he's having these dreams. He's dreaming about the woods,
The woods, yeah.
and he's talking about his brother. I hadn't we didn't necessarily know what happened to his brother, but you had to figure there was a deeper conspiracy happening. But I
Mhm.
just thought that he was going to get neutralized in some other way, and you know, not actually kill himself. So
Yeah.
that was definitely a shocker.
Yeah, so he was dead, and then they make up the story about in episode 2 that Marie and Andre were the ones who saved everybody. They're the guardians of Godokin, uh,
Yeah,
which is like, Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought it
yeah.
was really funny.
And I forgot the name of the character who was like, that sounded really too many syllables.
Yeah,
We
too
we
many
need to
syllables.
workshop.
I thought that was really funny too. And I like the character who comes up to Marie the next day and he's like, "You're number 4 in the rankings, Black Girl Magic." And I was just like rolling my
Yeah.
eyes like, "Yo,
Oh
that's
man.
ugh, it's just so funny." The show did a good job at making fun of what you call it, some of the commentary in here. I thought that's really funny. All right. So then also Emma has a storyline where she tells the girl that her superpower comes from throwing up, and she ends up telling everybody and
Oh yeah.
essentially humiliating her and kind of like a cyberbullying
Ju-
kind of
just for
storyline
content.
just for
Just for
content.
content. Yeah.
And that's like a commentary on the social media and how
Mhm.
people will use anything for content and they don't care who they exploit. It's pretty interesting, and I felt
Yeah,
like that was really good too.
like you remember that scene where it's a very brief moment, but after when they're at the memorial for the dean, and you have that one girl with the stretchy arm, and she's doing this
Yes.
selfie, and she's like just pouring her heart out with pain, and then as soon as she stops recording, her face just goes back to normal, and she goes about, like, it was, just that sort of subtle social
Mhm.
commentary about how people are performative for social media, and
Mhm.
it's a little bit dehumanizing, and it's a little bit jarring. Well, it's a lot
Right.
jarring.
Very true. But it happens. It happens a
Right,
lot.
exactly.
You'd be surprised. Also, we meet Indira, who basically uh, is working in these labs, and the first time you find out about the woods, and you kind of see Sam and what's happening there. So, I thought that was pretty interesting. And we also see that Andre is like stressing with what Golden Boy told him, something about it being with his dad. And then he just goes to his dad's statue, goes right to the crotch, and just like pulls out a phone, which I thought was this show is so funny.
So
I
what
thought
I
that
the question that should have been on everyone's mind is, how did he get the phone in his
in there,
father in there? Yeah.
yeah, in his father's crotch. Like I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, it's
It
like
was
I imagine, like, late at night, like Golden Boy's in there, like looking like he's giving Golden what's his Polarity a hand job, but he's like
yeah,
really just like put
put
he's
it
like put
in.
it,
I guess he could kind of melt it in, but then the phone would melt. I don't understand. I don't know how it works.
yeah. I mean, it made more sense well, he's not Polarity yet, for Andre,
Yeah.
to be able to pull it out. Phrasing.
Pull it
But
out.
but it but
Andre
yeah, but
pulls
less.
out, yes. Yeah. All right. And then like he goes to try to find some information, and then
Mhm.
Kate ends up kind of saving him. All these people were in the stairs, and she's like, this one cop comes in there and says, "I want you to ram something in my chocolate strawberry or something."
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "What the hell's going on?" And apparently she had pushed them, and then they were
Mhm.
kind of simulating more sex stuff, which yeah, this show loves to do. It's got a little bit of everything for everybody.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Kate, like, even early on, that we saw just how powerful, like, Kate can be with regard to pushing people and,
Yeah.
like, setting up their, even that one scene where she said, like, "Every hour on the hour, I want you to hit yourself, with a bat and say," I forgot
Yeah.
what he was supposed to say.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Kilgrave from
Yeah,
Jessica Jones, kind of that
yeah,
power, right?
exactly, and we know how well that worked out for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Like she's one of the most powerful people in this place. So yeah, so we find out about Golden Boy's brother Sam. And basically
Mhm.
Kate has been the one who has been putting him to sleep and erasing Golden Boy's memory of him
I
all the
know.
time. So we find out that about Kate and we're like, oh shit, she is not a good person here.
Kate
We
is the
also find
ops.
yeah. And then Indira has a meeting with Marie, telling her, hey, maybe we can find your sister. Maybe this will happen, kind of incentivizing her to play along, be the good person. Let us make you whoever we want to make you. Very like the Star is Born kind of thing where they're
Yeah,
like they find a star and they're kind of making them, right? But Jordan was the one who actually saved
right.
people from Golden Boy, and they're not giving Jordan the credit, which is also
Yeah,
very
and
interesting.
sort of early on, you really sort of start to realize, this is what good prequels do, right? And this isn't technically a prequel, but it when it talks about how most of the heroes that you've met earlier on in the boys from the seven did go to God
Yeah.
that you can sort of see the process of them getting corrupted, right? You can see that they could have gone in with good intentions, but
Mhm.
that the not sacrifices, the compromises that they have to make to sort of doing the right thing and going along with the party line, can start to
Yeah,
undermine them.
that's
And
so true.
you saw it with Marie and Jordan. Marie didn't want to go back to where she came from, didn't want to go back to the projects essentially.
Yeah,
And she's like, I'll do what I got to do to get ahead.
yeah. And another character who we kind of meet, well, not a character, but characters, is the parents of Jordan, who
Hmm.
don't seem to have a problem with her being, both genders, but they don't have a problem shooting her up with V when she was a baby, or he was a baby, or they
Right.
were a baby.
Yeah, my sense of that was that, um let's see maybe I don't remember it properly. My sense of that is that uh the father only acknowledged the male
Yeah,
pronoun, only acknowledged Jordan as his son,
yeah,
and just treated the female perspective of the the bigenderism as just kind of like a phase. Almost, it was sort of giving the, when parents find out that their child's on LGBTQ
mhm,
spectrum, just being like, oh, it'll pass, you're in college, you'll figure it out when you get
yeah,
out, like, but you and then you'll go back to being quote unquote normal. Like
yeah, yeah.
I felt like that was the energy that the father was giving towards Jordan.
Yeah, and then we also see, like, Marie has a lot of guilt for killing her parents, but Kate's like, "Listen, all of our parents injected us with this shit, so fuck all of them," which is really interesting because before The Boys, people didn't know that that's how everyone
Right,
got superpower. People really thought God gave them these powers,
right.
and now we're a few I don't know how many years later since the last season of The Boys where the people found out all this stuff, but now it's common knowledge what their parents did to them. So I thought that was
Yeah,
really, really interesting.
which kinda means that, most of them had to have that moment where they had to grapple with thinking that they were mutants and then
Yeah.
finding out they were metahumans. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that
exactly.
it's like, "Oh, it was random chance, or it was God, or it was whatever that I was born this way." And then you find out, no, actually your parents, were subjected you to experimentation.
Yeah.
And, the fact that in the face of that, so many people were still okay with it, is an interesting thing that hopefully they explore.
Yeah, I want to see them explore that too. Also, we see a cameo by the Deep. He
Yeah.
showed up on the TV screen. I thought that was pretty funny. And then Emma goes and becomes small and goes on this little detective hunt, and she
Hmm.
finds Sam. And then her and Sam end up killing one of the security guards and escaping, which I thought was really cool. And then at the end of this episode, Andre and Kate hook up, and I'm just like, whoa, this show is all over the place. Lots of stuff happening here.
Yeah, and that went back to my whole thing about like I didn't trust Andre. You know, you can't. That's not homeboy behavior, man. You don't hook up with your boy's ex like right after he died.
Yeah,
Like it just
but we find out that's not the first time they did that.
I know.
That was the biggest shock. I was like, "Bro, I could understand you're both in pain, you're both grieving, something happened. Like, all right, fine, I'll give it to you." But no, that it was even before. That's
I
wild.
know, I know. There's no excuse for it, Andre. You're bad
And
friends.
Kate, she's for the streets.
Well,
Oh my god,
Kate's got bigger sins on the ledger
that
than
is true.
than hooking up with her boyfriend's buddy.
There's a lot of red on her ledger for sure.
Exactly.
All right. So
Now,
we
did you
meet.
no quickly? Did you ship it immediately with Sam and Emma? Because I kind of did.
Yeah, I think so too. I felt like they were going that route. Yeah, I got that vibe. What I didn't see was Jordan and Marie. I didn't see that one happening.
No, I didn't. I didn't. You know, I that's going to be interesting because again, they didn't like each other when they first met, and
Yeah.
you know,
So that was funny.
but
And also I was like, which gender is she gonna like? Like I didn't even know.
well,
Right?
no,
Like
because remember they talked about that. They were like, you know, I can't remember who Jordan was confiding in that you know assumed that Marie was more into male Jordan
yeah.
and was kind of afraid, you know, afraid to perhaps shift into female Jordan. And
Yeah.
it turned out that Marie was probably more into female Jordan, actually.
Yeah. That was pretty interesting. Also there was this one scene where I think like female Jordan was having sex and the parents come in and she had to turn into a boy real quick. And I was just like, that is strange. That was pretty jarring. But yes, so Marie goes to this guy named Rufus and to help him out with something. And he
His
ends
name
up
is way too close to Roofy. Like, how is that
isn't it
accept?
Rufus the roofier? So he basically roofies her, and then she wakes up and this guy's like basically has this thing out. And what does she do? She explodes it. And not in the way you would think. She
No, no,
explodes.
not
She
in the good way.
not in the good way.
Oh no! I mean, That was our first indication that being able to control blood is a little bit more powerful than just being able to do blood whiplash.
Yeah, yeah, and blood whiplash. Yeah, like that. She was basically whiplash with blood. Yeah, exactly. Oh man, so that was pretty funny. Um, but Jordan ends up saving her again. Like
Yeah,
they don't even like each other at this point. But I think it was he or she. I don't know which version saved him.
yeah.
But
We'll
one of
just say
them.
they when
Yeah,
except
it was
for you know.
yeah, we'll just say they saved her. Um, and then they get into an argument, and then there's this detective that comes there named Tech Knight,
Tech
and
Knight.
he's basically just figuring out everything that happened. He's like, "Yep, the world's greatest detective." He's basically Batman, and he
Basically.
just yeah, and then he just figures out everything. He knows everything what everyone did. Uh, and while this is happening, Indira is like blackmailing Tech Knight because even though he figured everything out, he likes to hump random things.
Mhm, yeah. If there's a hole, he will fill that hole.
Yeah,
Can't
at the
help
end
it.
when he was looking at a tree and the tree looked like a butthole. Yo,
Oh
that
man, he
was
reminds me of when every now and then you get those like sexual memes of like everyday objects that look
oh
like a
yeah.
body part, and it'll go around on like Twitter, and it's like, okay. It'll be like an apple.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Tech Knight.
Where did I see that? Oh, there was one where it was somebody's like sofa, and it was like, why does the sofa look like it's got some cheeks? It was like
Exactly.
it was something stupid like that. I remember seeing that meme.
That's how Tech
Um,
Knight sees the universe. He can find
yeah,
the cracks in any story.
yeah. All right. So we find that this other Sam breaks into some guy's house named Doctor Cardosa or something, Doctor Edison
Mhm,
Cardosa, and he's like attacking them. But then all the other people end up showing up, and they try to stop him. Sam tries
mhm.
to uh, basically kill this guy.
Yeah, because he was
So
the doctor that was experimenting on him.
yeah, he was the doctor experiment on him. So and that doctor happened to be gay and with the son. Like I said, people don't realize this show is more like folk than all these other
Yeah,
shows. They just don't notice.
right.
um, and then Emma becomes big. So this is the first time we find out that Emma can not only get small, she can also get big.
And
So
it was the
that
first time that she realized that she could do it, I think.
yeah, yeah. A lot of like growth and learning when it comes to Emma.
Mhm,
Like we get to like be with her on her entire powers journey, which I think is really
right.
cool. But all these people wake up the next day without any recollection of what happened.
I think it was,
Andre,
like, 3 days later. I don't think it was the
y-
next day.
you're
Like,
right.
I think they had lost time.
Yeah, I should say the next scene, they wake up and they don't
Yeah.
remember how many days, but they have been to parties, they have been doing a lot of stuff, they just don't remember any of it. Andre and Kate wake up together, Marie and Jordan wake up together, and then Emma wakes up in a pool and she's huge, large, and it's just lots of crazy stuff happening. And they think Rufus did it because Rufus has, taken time
The
from them
roofie
before.
powers, yeah.
Right. But it turns out it was Kate all along. Kate was the one
I
who did it.
know. She was
So Kate was
pretending.
lying. She was pretending. Yeah. And then we see Sam he comes and he tries to tell Emma about it. They don't remember who he is. So he goes
Mhm.
back to his hideout. And then all these like cops try to stop him, but turns out they're puppets. Like that part got really weird to me. And I was just like,
You kn
wait,
but
is he
you see,
imagining this?
that reminded me of Black Noir, how he used to
Yeah.
see things as animation, that it helps him cope with the violence that he's doing if he's doing it to puppets.
Yeah, exactly. So Black, yeah, he does it to puppets. Black Noir did it to like Looney Tunes. I
Mhm.
thought that was really really funny. Um, and yeah, and then Kate we find out is in on it with Indira,
That was
and
Gene
they've
Shetty.
been in on it for a while.
Well, not
So
just that, I mean, it was kind of like it was almost like a mirror or like a parallel of
yeah,
what was happening with, the senator, with Victoria Newman and,
yeah,
the Vought guy, I can't remember his name right now, that at a young age, um, you know, he took, Dean Shetty took her under her wing and basically said, "Your parents don't want you,
yep,
but come with me." It was very Professor X type move, right? "Come to my
yeah,
school," and he's her Jean Grey,
yeah.
and,
Oh, you're right.
that, like, "Come to my school and I can, raise you and, kind of like your parents don't want you, but we can help you hone your powers, but you just have to protect us."
Exactly, exactly. And then in the next episode, we find out why her parents don't like her. It's because she told her brother to go away, and he went away, and they never found him again, which
That
is
is
crazy.
yeah.
That's some fucked up stuff. I wonder if they'll ever go back to that. Like they'll ever like find him again. I'd be very curious if she ever reunites with her brother and Marie reunites with her sister. I feel like one of them's
Yeah.
got to happen.
Well, in the case of I feel like in the case of Kate, that's like one of those things that like closes her arc. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? That if like she meets her brother, it's probably gonna mean that they're about to kill her. Like that, like
that's
right,
true.
like the closure. But again, it just reinforces the idea that when these powers manifest, it's almost reminiscent of like how Rogue, when her powers manifested, she put the boy in the coma. That you
Yeah,
like that moment when you find out your powers exist, can be traumatizing, not just for people around you, but for you yourself, because you didn't know, you were just mad at your brother. You said something mean to your brother,
yeah,
and it's like, how like kids like if their parents die and they said like before their parents die, like I wish you were dead, like it
Yeah,
just traumatized them, it messes them up, forever.
yeah,
Like, well, that's
yeah,
Kate, because she actually did say the thing that caused her brother to disappear, and her parents don't look at her the same. Her parents are afraid to be in her presence.
yeah,
They don't want to be touched. They don't want to, be spoken to because they're afraid that she's gonna mind control them.
yeah.
It's
But
very sad.
they're the ones that fucking put V in her and did all that shit to her. It's
True. I
oh,
mean, it's a little bit like karma, but
yeah,
I guess it's still kind of a dice roll. When you give your kids powers, you don't know what powers are gonna,
that is true.
what powers are gonna
Yeah,
manifest.
that is
But
very,
it doesn't
very
make
true.
them blameless. It just,
Yeah,
it just makes it understandable.
yeah. So we also find out that Shetty is making a drug to kill Soups or a virus to kill Soups, and
Right.
like we're like, okay. At this point, we don't know why, but that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Legacy virus.
yeah. All right. So we see that, and then Sam. Uh, so what they do is they go into Kate's mind, basically,
Hmm.
and they're in the woods, which is where this traumatic thing happened with her brothers. And then Soldier Boy shows up because she used to masturbate to Soldier Boy. Like,
Nice.
I was like, okay, I'll buy that.
Exactly. And I like how it was like because he wasn't the real Soldier Boy. Like
Yeah.
they're like, well, you know that you're basically a Russian sleeper agent. He's like, am I?
That's just so funny. But yes, they go in, and then I think while this is happening, Sam and Emma are together
Mhm.
and they hook up. And then we
Nice.
find out Kate's backstory. We find out the whole thing about her mom, her whatever happened, how Shetty found her, all of that stuff. And we also find other people's secret. We find out how Jordan got his job, being the dean's like assistant, and we also find out Andre and Kate hooked up. So
Mhm.
lots of things happening in this episode. What are your
Lots of
thoughts about
things
all
being
of these
revealed.
reveals?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my favorite episodes, just kind of, because you
Yeah.
get this often, when you find out a character is playing both sides, you know, immediately it becomes like, okay, now we hate this character and they're like mustache twirling villain. But this
Mhm.
kind of it took like a beat because you
Yeah.
really got into like why Kate did what she did and why everybody else is kind of dealing with their own shit as well. So it's not like it's more of a mess. It's like they have a right to be mad at Kate, but they also, because they had the shared experience, are kind of empathetic to Kate, and they don't really know how to proceed in that situation because they do care for her and they do like want to be mad at her, but they also want to be sympathetic to her, and it sort of turns that villain hero dichotomy on its head because nobody's hands are clean, nobody's like
Yeah.
perfectly uh, able to be on the moral high ground.
True, very true. Yeah. So, in the 7th episode, Emma basically hides Sam, at school. Uh,
Mhm.
Great job, smart idea, I guess. Right? So while this is happening, Marie and Jordan are snooping on Indira Shetty, and they find out that her daughter and husband were lost on a flight. The same flight that Homelander refused to save,
Right.
which was wild. And this is
Yeah.
where her hatred for Stoops comes from.
Yeah, no, I was very confused there because I didn't remember the full timeline of like how many years had passed between the beginning of the boys and and this season. You know,
Mhm.
that felt like maybe 2 or 3 years in the past, but it must have been longer because it seemed like she was in this job for long enough to like earn everybody's trust. Which
Yeah,
Yeah,
unless
it
she
just seems
had the
like it would have
job
been hard.
before this happened.
Oh, fair point. She
Yeah,
had the job, and
right.
then when what happened to her family happened, that's
Sw
where the
Switch her
turn.
attitude, yeah.
Yeah,
So
maybe that.
we kinda know, like, why she wants to make the disease, like, she wants to go full, like, genocide on all the soups, which
Yeah.
isn't too far off of what Butcher wants. So it's one of those
Yep.
things.
And more on that later, right?
Yeah. And then she goes to meet Grace Mallory, and she's like, "What is it with you Brits and having the same like goal?" Which I think was really funny.
Right.
So while this is happening, Sam is hiding out at the school, and he starts hanging out with the MAGA crowd, which is what I like to call them, the superhero MAGA
Yeah, yeah,
crowd. You see the guy wearing a
for
red
sure.
hat, so
Yeah,
like,
he wore the hat in the beginning too. I didn't realize that until I was rewatching it that he was,
yeah.
um yeah, it was a very MAGA themed hat.
It definitely was, but not only that, but he's one of the person that goes like, "You will not control us," which is a reference to "You will not replace us," with what happened in
Hmm.
Charlottesville, with the
Right.
Nazis and stuff like that, who
Yeah.
Trump called fine people on both sides.
Yeah, yeah. And
Uh,
remember, in the world of, you already sort of, it's been revealed at this point in the world of the boys that the compound V is basically Nazi science, right?
yeah,
That they're
Stormfront
that
was a
they're
Nazi.
exactly. Stormfront's like the first V person. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, so it really does continue to tie into the whole master race narrative, and it would make sense that even among the superpowered young people, that
mhm,
there would be a contingent of sort of master race. We're not going to allow the inferior people to hold us down. We should be in charge, and
yeah,
that's the path that Homelander, on the other show, has been moving towards. So it's an interesting convergence of plot,
yeah. Well, speaking of
and
Homelander,
the fact. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, speaking of Homelander, they actually brought up the fact that he killed someone in
Hmm.
broad daylight, and people would cheered for him, which is something Trump actually said. Trump said, "I shoot
Exactly.
somebody in the middle
Mhm.
of Fifth Avenue," and people would cheer. How do people not know this is the most woke show on TV? Like,
Exactly. How are people missing that whole thing? And what I was also going to mention is that that episode was the episode where Victoria Newman, shows up on the show,
yes,
and she's very much, obviously we know she's also a soup, but when we're introduced to her, we were introduced to her as almost like an AOC type character,
yes,
who's kind of very popular with the people who want to rein in the soups and want to
exactly.
do the right thing and be responsible to the people. So
Yeah,
you
and
know
she says that, like, superheroes should have super I think, like, super citizens should have their civil rights, but
Mhm.
they need to be held to the same standard and have to go through Homelander will have to go through a jury of his own peers, and they're like, "Regular people are not our peers." So, like, another
Mhm.
example of saying, like, how they are above everyone else. Like,
Right.
again, meta commentary on
Mhm.
political stuff that's happening in the real world.
Yeah,
So,
for
I
sure.
thought that was pretty interesting. Um
What did you think of the dynamic between Victoria Newman and Marie?
I thought that was interesting because you realize that Victoria was the one pulling the strings all along. She got her accepted into the school, and it's because they have the same power. And I was like, I knew she had the power to make things explode, but I didn't know she had blood-based powers, and that's like the
That's
science
how she
behind
makes
her
things
power.
explode. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had seen in an earlier episode how Marie made the guy's dick explode, or a cocksplosion, if you will. Um, and we should have been able to realize that if you can do that to the little head, you can do it to the big head.
That's true. Very, very true. All right. And while this is happening, we find out that Andre's dad, Polaris, has a seizure. So he ends up going to the ambulance and there's stuff going on. So
Mm,
Andre is a little bit out of commission
mm.
for a little while.
You know what
Um,
that sorry to cut you off.
go
Remember,
for it.
what that reminded me of, kind of on a small scale?
Hmm.
In Logan, when Professor X has his seizure, and
Yeah.
how it, like, completely,
Oh,
like, freaks out, like, this whole, like, just it got the wheels turning. It's like, if you have magnetic powers and you have a seizure like that, you can cause, some kind of, like, electromagnetic pulse even.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you're right. And it does felt like the Professor X and Logan thing. That's pretty cool. I didn't put that together. But yes, we find out that Newman was pulling the strings. Um, but Kate is actually at this point goes to find Shetty and they're talking, and it looks like, I don't know, maybe they're getting along, but turns out she's going to kill Shetty. And at this point, I'm like, is she faking it? Is her and Shetty cooked up a plan
Mhm.
to kind of like get the drop on these guys? But no, she legit killed Shetty. And I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. What were your thoughts there? I thought that came out of nowhere a little bit.
So at first, I thought this was her way of trying to get like redemption,
Yeah.
like trying to like say, "Look, I'm proving to you that I'm on your side by killing the bad guy."
Mm,
But then I realized that she realized that the pills that she was taking that were supposed to be for her like headaches were
mm-hmm.
actually limiting her powers. And
Yeah.
then I realized that the switch was flipping and she was going from, you know, like Jean Grey to Magneto, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like she was like, "Oh hell no. I'm
It
I'm
also,
I'm
good.
no, go ahead."
I was gonna say it also reminds me of Captain Marvel, where like Captain Marvel had that thing on her neck, and she
Mhm.
realizes that like it was actually holding her back the whole time, and she was actually like fighting with one hand tied behind her back. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like what Kate was going through with the pills, just like you mentioned.
Yeah. But it was also that, like, it wasn't just I mean, I do think that she wanted her friends to forgive her, but
Yeah.
because of her just passive ability to read people's minds, she knew that even if they said that they were forgiving her, she could sense their doubt and she could
Mm,
sense their fear, and that made her a little bit paranoid, like, okay, you're always going to be afraid of me, so I might as well be the villain, I might as well um, you know, take people out because I'm never going to be the hero in your eyes.
yeah.
I'm never going to be the good guy.
But it also felt like she was believing the stuff that she was saying. Like she was drinking the Kool-Aid now because her and Sam were like, "Hey, we're better than these guys." When she killed them, and then they
Mhm.
go and then they free all of these people who are trapped in the woods, and I'm like, "Okay, great, love that for
Mhm.
them."
Yeah.
But then they encourage them to go out and kill all these people, and I was like, "No, I
Right.
don't love that for you."
But again, like I was saying before, it's like, this I would occasionally kind of like dig deep on the mythology of Professor X, like
Hmm.
the person who's like the most powerful telepath, who has the ability to sense everyone's bigotry,
Hmm.
but also has the ability to turn off everyone's bigotry, but
Hmm.
chooses not to do it. Like he wants to like change people's minds, like the quote unquote right way rather than the other way. But
Yeah.
like Kate is young, she's got this anger and this like trauma and all this other stuff, of her being able to hear people's thoughts and her being able to control people's behavior. And I just think that emotionally she's just not mature enough to deal with the fact that her power is scary
Hmm.
and people won't trust themselves around her, won't trust her around them.
Yeah.
And the way that she's now coping with that, instead of how like a Professor X would cope with it and be like, I'm here, I owe you know peace, I'm just trying to usher in cooperation. Like she's like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like everybody's gonna die. It's just just the soups.
Yeah, exactly. So there's violence all over the campus, and we see Ashley in this episode, who's out there
Yeah.
trying to figure out who will join the seven, and and then all this chaos breaks out, and Sam is also over there, and Sam's trying to go through whether he should, be on one side or the other. He can't decide. He's still seeing his brother, who his brother is telling him, "Hey, don't go over to the dark side," and then he
Mhm.
decides to shut that off and goes,
Right.
with Kate and be on their side.
And
Um,
that was heartbreaking because of Emma, because
yeah,
Emma was she understood that they had hurt Sam and he really didn't have a baseline of good people. So, he's in full revenge mode. But like you said, Sam asks Kate to turn off his empathy basically.
yeah.
And, so he doesn't have to feel it. So he doesn't have to see his brother kind of judging him and saying like, there's a better way or what have you.
Yeah, that's so true. He asked her to turn it off, and then he had the conversation with Emma. Does that happen before he turns off the emotions, or
Yeah,
after?
I think it was before.
This is before. So he had the conversation with Emma, which also happened at the class where it's like an actual theater and stage. So they kind of thought they were like having
Right.
a scene, which I thought was pretty funny. But she senses that he has become too radicalized, which is also a
Mhm.
commentary on things because like people who are regular kids end up becoming really radicalized because they've been hurt or something
That
happened.
YouTube algorithm took them down an incel rabbit hole.
The incel rabbit hole, right? That pipeline from like being hurt to becoming a freaking white nationalist. It's just a slippery road.
Exactly.
And he became a superhero supremacist, basically. Um,
Yeah.
and in just a matter of like, a few days. So Emma and Sen have this fight. And then Emma realizes at the end of this fight, she becomes really, really small. And she realizes she doesn't have to throw up to become
Yeah.
small anymore. She actually can use her emotions, and she can use her emotions to grow big or small, which
Yeah.
makes her even more powerful now. She's
Exactly.
basically Ant-Man. She went from being like someone with like
Right.
a lame power to someone who can actually use it.
Well, again, I mean, we had seen that kind of get seeded across the season because when we meet her mother and we
Yeah.
see how her mother kind of bullies her and
Yes.
uses her weight, her
Just
weight and
exploits
her
her.
like and sort of like you see it with a lot of stage moms or stage
Yeah.
parents rather, where it's like you're too fat, like you've got to control your diet or whatever. So like the eating disorder, or to the extent that it is a disorder, was kind of a
Yeah.
manifestation of her psychology, of her insecurity, and she was making her because of the shame of her purging. That was the true cause of her shrinking. It
Mhm.
wasn't the it was psychosomatic. It was that
Yeah.
she was feeling this way, and that's why she was shrinking. And then when she ate, she would sort of like big herself up,
Mhm.
and then get bigger. But
Yeah.
but
That's
like you
so
said,
true.
now
The
that
scene's
she
there.
knows, right, exactly. But now that she knows it, now that she knows that it's tied to her emotions, chances are when we see her like in later seasons, she'll be able to access those feelings and control the powers more readily.
The one thing about her power is that the same thing happened with Translucent. Like they go for realism, so they don't do things like, oh, if you can um become invisible, you have to be naked because your clothes can also. So
Mhm.
she also has the same problem. Like she goes big or small. Um, either she's going to become naked because her clothes don't fit her, or they're going to rip off. So that's like the one thing where I feel like they're going to have to go back and forth with that all the time, unless they figure out a way. Because like when she's small, she wears like a Polly Pocket outfit, like a doll's
Yeah.
clothing, which I think is really really funny.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I know that they did the thing with Golden Boy, right? Where, like his powers would always burn off his clothes. But
right.
then the professor Brink, says that the guys in R&D like built him a suit that
Yeah.
that won't burn. So presumably maybe there's a material out there, kind of like unstable molecules in the Marvel universe, where like
Yeah.
it can change size with you, but you just have to be able to afford it, which the average person can't afford.
Right.
But maybe if she
Vought
gets
Vought will have to buy it for you.
yeah, exactly. It's cost like $20 million to get a size changing suit.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably what they're gonna do. It's probably just like it's just the one line of dialogue that could solve that problem. No big.
Exactly.
Ne Next we see all hell breaks loose on this campus,
Mhm.
and then Maurice tries to save all these people. She turns her like blood into daggers now, so now she can turn them into like hard daggers. Uh, and when she does that, everyone's super happy. Jordan looks at her, and as Kate is coming to push Jordan, she blows up her hand, and I was like, "Damn, that was
Yeah.
insane." I didn't see that coming. What about you?
No, you're right. I mean, again, we should have because the goriness. Like I figured they'd find another way to stop her. But blowing off her hand, definitely works.
Yeah,
Even
she
though we
can't
know
push.
now, even though we know now that she doesn't have to touch you
Oh, she
anymore.
doesn't
Like
have
she
to
can
touch you?
still. I mean, we thought so, but she was able to do like so much once the pills wore off. I kind of feel
Oh, that's
like,
true.
yeah, I
Yeah,
kind of feel
she
like she just needs like a little bit of proximity other than skin to skin contact.
true, maybe, yeah, I think you're right. But then also Homelander shows up, and then I'm like, "Okay, cool, Homelander shows up," and,
No,
like, she
here's the thing. I know for some people they were shocked at what happened when Homelander
yeah.
showed up, but I was like, Homelander is not gonna let these people of color attack white kids. Like, it's like his instinct.
Bro, you're so right. You're so right. It does feel like the situation where it's like a kid of color does something and a white kid does something, and then you're like, you're even though that person's in the right, they find a way. They always find a way to make it that that person's the aggressor, and that's exactly what Homelander did. Very interesting. Also reminds me a little bit about like, the US and two countries in the Middle East. Like one person does
Mhm.
one thing and then the other one's like, "Nope, how dare you? Are you an animal?" Like that usage of that word and imagery
For
is
sure.
very parallel to a lot of the things that are happening in my opinion. So I thought that was very, very interesting. But yes, Homelander shows up, and then he uses his laser eyes on Marie, who took it like a champ apparently. And apparently
Mhm.
but they're not dead. They're in some room,
Yeah.
and they changed the storyline. The Guardians of Godokun are now Sam and Kate,
Mhm.
who wanted to destroy all of these people.
Yeah. So
Though,
this is where my theory corner kicks in.
okay,
Um, so as if we remember, I think there were two slots that are supposed to be filled for the seven, down from the last season,
mhm,
and they were going through. It was Ashley who was basically offering people slots in the seven if they protected them.
yeah,
Now that we have our two Guardians of Godolkin, and they're both white people.
yes,
um, I predict that Sam's going to be the new Black Noir.
mm,
He's going to get in the Black Noir costume, and he's going to do Black Noir things. Like he's got all of the powers or whatever. And again, like I said before, with Black Noir and the animation, this version is going to see everything as puppets.
yeah.
um, and then I think they're gonna give Kate like a robotic arm or something like that, and then she's
Oh,
gonna
you're right.
be in the seven next season.
That's so true. And they say The Boys is gonna take up right after this. So it
Yeah.
basically ends up and we see that because we see Butcher shows up at the very end
Hmm.
of this and calls them a bunch of C words, which I
Yeah,
thought
and he
very
was
bit
in the woods, right?
yeah, he was.
Yeah, so I think he's gonna find, even though supposedly Victoria Newman got rid of all of the whatever you want to
Virus.
call it, the legacy virus.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna discover the research, and he's also gonna try to design a soup killer uh,
Yeah.
thing.
But doesn't he have powers now too? Isn't he also a soup?
Yeah, but it's temp V, so it might not
Oh,
work.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
It's
it might
10.
not work if it's not in your system.
That's so true. Yeah, yeah. All right, cool, man.
And plus,
I'm
and
excited.
plus, remember, he's supposed to be dying anyway. Remember, they said that he's only got like a few months left to live, so he
Oh,
might
yeah,
not
you're right.
care. He might not care anyway if he can like wipe out the soups with like some kind of bomb or some kind of chemical weapon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he definitely has a vendetta against the soups, so totally get
Hmm.
that. All right, man. That's the end of this season. How did you like the season overall? First season, I thought it was great. Honestly, I think it may be better than The Boys. I feel like the social commentary is better. I feel like the plot is great. I just feel like The Boys has more like standout characters a little bit. They're
Hmm.
like more iconic, but I don't know. I really like Gen V. I thought it was great.
So first of all, I was very skeptical of the show when it was first announced,
Mhm.
and and I waited a long time before I watched the trailer, till basically right before the show came on, and and it blew me away. I think that one of the advantages that it has is because it's smaller, um, not smaller stakes, but it involves this small area and these just a small group of characters. You get a
Yeah.
lot more time with them, and you get to invest in them and their relationships. So it just feels more of a dramatic, like human show. Whereas
Yeah.
The Boys is sprawling. It's doing it has spent the seasons doing the work of like trying to fill in the blanks of this world and showing all of the facets of it, and I think that's been great as well. I just think that this is a more focused story, and because
Yeah.
it's a more focused story, you invest in the characters a lot faster, and you care about them, and and the fact that they're younger, and the fact that the mistakes that they make seem like the mistakes that young people would make at that time in their lives, and you want them to kind of make it to the other side and not become the already corrupted characters that you've met in the time of The Boys. Like most of
Yeah.
the characters in The Boys have done so much that they're kind of irredeemable,
Yeah.
whereas with these characters, they haven't yet gone over the line of irredeemable, and you want them to kind of be redeemed. So I
Mm,
think that helps, ratchet up the drama and ratchet up the stakes, because you care about the emotional stakes more so than is the world going to end, or
yeah.
who heads are going to get blown up this week.
Very true, very true. Yeah, I do feel like it's a lot more grounded, and because of that, you can get invested in the individual stories a lot more, and some of their characters and how things ends up. Like when it comes to The Boys, I don't really care about their relationships within each other. I just want to know what's happening next in the storyline, in the world, or like where it's happening with,
Right.
what you call it, the Homelander and Butcher and their rivalry, right?
Right.
Whereas this, you're more invested in these characters and their relationships. So yeah, I definitely feel you on that. All right, man. Well, thank you for joining. This was
Yeah, thanks
great.
for
I feel
having me.
like we went through every little thing on this show. This was a really cool deep dive. I love picking apart the social commentary, but also some of
Mhm.
the meta commentary, and also some of the actual, all the
Fun
stuff
moments, yeah, the gags and stuff.
the gags and the dick riding, whatever, all of that stuff.
Literal dick riding.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I can't believe they put that scene in there. But then again, they've actually put
This is
worse
The
scenes
Boys.
in there
Yeah.
in Boys, yeah, for sure. All right, man. Thank you for joining us. Let people know where they can find you if you want people to find you.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me. I occasionally write for Murphy's Multiverse. So if you want to see my textual musings, you can check me out there. I also have a podcast that's on a little bit of a hiatus, but it'll be coming back in the new year. And that's the Racial Draft Podcast, where we change the complexion of the comic book universe one draft pick at a time. I've rehearsed that.
Nice.
But yeah, it's a comic. It's about comic book superhero and race bending, and we try to keep it light, but every now and then we'll delve into sort of the deep topics, kind of like we do here. But yeah, that'll be coming back in 2024, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully looking forward to getting Neves over on the show.
Yeah, man. I'm available whenever, man. I'll whatever it takes. I'll be on there.
Okay.
All right, man. Thank you so much for joining. And guys, until next time, Salaam nerds.
Hey.